headphones up.
How's it going, everyone? Tony from the Drum Center of Portsmouth, the largest independently owned drum shop in the world. And if there's anything in this video you'd like to purchase, the links will be in the description below. Today we're taking a look at something that I'm very passionate about, and that is microphones and recording. We're going to be focusing on two different mic packs of very high quality, one from Audix and one from Earthworks. And also, I get asked a lot how we get the sounds for our videos, and I'm going to get into some of the details and how I use these microphones to get those sounds. Also, before we get started, just a quick reminder to make sure you're subscribed to our channel. That way you get notified when we make new videos like this. There are three common types of microphones: dynamic, condenser, and ribbon. Today, in this video, we are going to be focusing on dynamic and condenser microphones. Now, I could go down the rabbit hole and give you the scientific nonsense about what makes up a condenser mic or a dynamic mic, but I'm just going to touch on a few basic observations of these different types of mics. I would say the most common type of microphone is a dynamic microphone for a lot of reasons. One, they're really good at handling high SPLs, which is important on drums, especially with the close mics. They're virtually indestructible. I say virtually because you can break them if you really try. They're usually more affordable. They don't require phantom power, and they also offer up a good amount of punch and impact, especially helpful with drum sounds. Condenser microphones are usually more open on the top end and offer up a bit more detail and clarity. Typically, they're a little bit more fragile, although with these Earthworks mics, I feel that's not as much of an issue. They're built very, very well. They also do require phantom power, and they tend to be a little bit more expensive due to the way that the capsules are made. Now, there is a big price difference between these two professional microphone packs, and hopefully this video will help illustrate the differences between these two price points. Here's a quick overview of what's included in each mic pack. With the Audix pack, you get a very cool metal travel case, 4 D-vise clamps to mount the tom and snare drum mics, 1 D6 for the bass drum, 1 I5 for the snare drum, 2 D2s for the 2 rack toms, 1 D4 for the floor tom, and 2 ADX51s for the overheads. The Earthworks microphones come in a nice molded hardshell case, along with 4 RM1 rim mounts to mount the snare and tom mics, 1 SR20LS for the bass drum, 4 DM20s for the snare and toms, and 2 SR25s for the overheads. Quickly wanted to talk about mic placement, because you can have the best microphones in the world, and if you place them poorly, you're not going to get a good sound. So with the snare drum, I always try to get the microphone just over the inside of the rim, pointed somewhat towards the center of the drum, but not completely flat. And then toms are similar, however, they're kind of brought in a little bit more. They're not quite as far to the edge, and I think that just kind of helps get a bit more impact on the toms. The bass drum, depending upon how many microphones I'm using, especially if it's a ported head, I'll get the microphone just inside and then kind of point it towards the beater, but not totally on axis with that. When I usually mic the bass drum, I have one on the outside as well, which you'll see later in the video. And it's a matter of making sure that those two microphones are lined up in terms of their phase. With overheads, I do typically prefer a spaced pair orientation for the mics. I feel like it gives a good stereo spread of the drums and cymbals. Typically between 42 to 48 inches above the snare drum is how I kind of measure everything. So it's super important to make sure that both sets of mics, well, single mic, but in this case, sets of mics, are the same distance from the snare drum. So you can check that with a tape measure. So that's right about 45 inches away from the center of the snare drum. And again, like that's the most important part for me with overheads, is getting them the same distance from the snare. While we're back here, I wanted to also just quickly mention a few things that I did to the drums for this recording. Messing around with this, the Snareweight, really cool. You can kind of move it around on the drum and find where the dampening sounds the best. Really just did that so that the drum was a little more controlled for the purposes of this video. And similarly, on the toms, stuck a few gels. I don't know exactly which model these are. I'll have that in the description below. A really small one on the 10, a slightly bigger one on the 12, and then a medium and a large here on the floor tom, just kind of tightening up the sound a little bit. In this video, we are featuring some very nice drums. From British Drum Company, these are the Legend Series drums, Scandinavian birch shells, and I really enjoy these. Sharp, focused, punchy, but lots of low end and a very full-bodied sound. Selected a British Drum Co. Merlin snare drum, the 14x6.5 version of that. Great drum. If there was a flagship drum from them, this would probably be it. And then for cymbals, we are using my personal Paistes.
I'm giving you some out of my own private stash. That is what a nice guy I am.
These are 602 Modern Essential 15 hats, 18 and 20-inch signature traditional thin crashes, and a 22-inch Dark Energy Mark II ride cymbal.
Before I forget, I wanted to quickly mention the signal path that is being used in this video, and in fact all of our videos. This is the part after the microphone, the cable, and from there on out. So, bit of a mess right now because we're getting cleaned up for the next video. Here are all the microphones and the cables. They all go into this 16-channel snake right here, which then snakes behind all the cymbals that are waiting to be filmed, into my extremely modest setup over here, which consists of a PreSonus Studio Live 32 AC. I'm just using this for the preamp, so there's no processing going on here other than if I was going to flip the phase, that's where I would do it. And this is also supplying phantom power to the condenser microphones. And then it goes right out of there into Pro Tools, which is the DAW that I use for all of the mixing for our videos.
I wanted to give a quick overview of the microphone setup that I have personally gravitated to over the last few years of recording countless drum sets up here on this same floor stage area. And it's important to know that over time, when you do a lot of recording, especially of a particular instrument, you will start to develop certain preferences that your ear gravitates towards, and maybe a certain microphone is more suited to recording a certain instrument to you personally. So over time, I've gravitated towards using an Audix i5 and a Audix ADX51 on the snare drum, a Audix D6, and one of their newer condenser mics called the A133, which is a large diaphragm condenser on the bass drum out in front of it. On the toms, I love the Earthworks DM20s. I think they're great. They capture all the detail I want. For the overheads, I use the Earthworks SR25s. And then for more fun and more realism and more air around the sound, I do use the Earthworks QTC30 omnidirectional condenser mics for the rooms. What you just heard is a full mix version of the audio, which is extremely similar to the mix that I would do for any of our videos, where I'm basically taking the raw audio signal and making it sound more like the drum sounded to me in the room. So wanted to include that as well so you can see where you can go with this. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts were on this. Can you hear the difference between the different mic packs? Does the price difference justify anything to you? Just because one is more expensive doesn't mean that that is the right one for you. Listen to certain characteristics and find out which things speak to you, which make the sounds that you want to hear. I think that's really important. If you have any questions on anything that was covered in this video, go ahead and drop a comment. I'll come through and I'll answer as many as I can. And if you'd like to purchase anything that was featured in this video, the links will be in the description below. And thanks again for the support.